Hello, welcome in my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding. With me, Andreas Yulianto, an English lecturer from Jakarta International University, Indonesia. Let us begin with the first chapter. Culture and the primary socialization process. We are going to discuss this topic during this meeting. Let me introduce you with the learning objectives of this class. The first, what are the functions and characteristics of culture? Second, how are cultural socialization processes? The third one, how is the role of language in socialization processes? The fourth one, what are the 7 facets of culture? The fifth one, what are the examples of cultural beliefs, values, and worldviews? Let's begin. Now, let us look at these pictures. We are very familiar with the situations where there are some people who are communicating, interacting each other, sharing ideas, feelings, etc. We are going to discuss about the culture, intercultural communications, and language which is used in these processes. Culture. What is actually culture? Is it about certain behaviors? Is it about a symbol which is assigned, or word or non-verbal communications which represents certain meanings? Or is it about artifact, kind of human creations? Or is it about product, certain product, such as traditional clothes? Well, there are a lot of definitions of culture, and you may also define your own definitions about culture. By the time, culture is displayed through the behaviors, how somebody is acting, behaving, using something, or speaking, or even it is about human creations such as product, traditional food, which represents certain characteristics of culture, community, or even country. Or it is about, sometimes it's about the symbols, which is used to deliver certain meaning to other people. Yeah, that's culture. Now, let us identify these pictures. There are 2 peoples here, a man and a woman. How do you interpret their handshake? Yeah, this one. For those who are regularly watching Korean movie, that you are familiar with this. It is to show certain expressions of love. But then, in another country, it has a different meanings. It is to show some amounts of money. Wow, it is quite surprising. Different culture, different country. Yeah. All right. Cultures are categorized into 2. The first is high culture. Now, let us focus on these pictures. What are the characteristics of the high cultures? Oh, it's about ballet, drama, music, etc. Well, Jane Jackson's 2014 classified high culture with the characteristics of refined, well-educated, and wealthy individuals. Yeah, everything about a high level or high social, yeah, elite things. Yeah, that's about the high culture. And the opposite one is the low culture, where Jan Jackson's uh, categorize them or classify them as the general or common people's activity, such as sport, food, and even dress code. Yeah. Now, let us learn from the case study in this session. Robert is a Frenchman currently working in Indonesia. He met many local people at work. He had a difficult time adjusting to the quiet Indonesian way of working. As time went on, he became the first foreigner to get to know these local people very well. It's surprising. Yeah. What happens? Of course, Robert has experienced a lot of things during staying in Indonesia. To answer the case study, we can learn from the facets of culture. The first is the culture as learned, where here we know that we are familiar with the communications and interactions. We always do that, yeah. And I'm sure that Robert also experienced this. And, continuously, while the process of the communications, we learn something new. And from the regular meeting or communications with different people, the process of learning itself, the process of learning one's culture, yeah, is referred to the enculturations. So we can be sure that Robert experienced these enculturations until he became well, he became getting to know with Indonesians or local people. And here, as long as we live and regularly meet with other people, yeah, and that time communications take place, and the situations also is a moment for everyone, yeah, to show themselves to each other through regular socializations. Um, in this process, they can share about their beliefs, values, norms, and even worldviews with others. In this way, language becomes a fundamental or important role. Yeah, and it is true, Jane Jackson's, that language and cultural socializations, our primary cultural beliefs, values, norms, and worldviews are internalized. Now move on to the next one. Culture as learned. We are familiar with the beliefs. Now, let us see. Uh, there are several aspects actually to form the basis of thinking about the culture. And here, culture is not, it can be passed down from generations to generations, from parents or even taught by the community, such as teachers in our school. And we know that many core beliefs are religious in nature and the central to a person's sense of self. Now look at the examples. In Islam, um, Muslims believe that there is no God, yeah, but Allah, and Muhammad is his messengers. And the Quran is their holy book or holy Bible. And for Christians, yeah, they believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is the Savior of humanity. While a fundamental belief of Buddhism is the reincarnations, the concept that people are reborn after dying. Other core beliefs may relate to the notions of health and wellness. Examples are the traditional medicines or traditional treatment of illness. Maybe you can find in your community or in your family. What kind of belief you have? Now, let us learn from the case study. Prakash is an Indian who is on vacations in Hong Kong. He knows that the best way to create happiness is to take a vacation somewhere new. He spent his holidays traveling and staying in luxury hotels there. When he searched for the right hotel and the room he wanted, he was quite surprised when in the elevator he didn't find the number 4 for the 4th floor. Moreover, he also didn't find a room with the number 4. This made it difficult to find a room. How could it be? Do you also find the same things? Now, let us find the answers of this situation. Beliefs may also be peripheral and superstition. Peripheral, based on Jane Jackson's 2014, it is about a personal perceptions. It is what is applicable on my point of view, my experience on my life. Sometimes it is not for other people. And from the previous experience by Prakash, he had an idea about the best way to create happiness, that is to take vacation somewhere new. Maybe you have your own way to create your happiness. Eating delicious food, sleeping, watching movie, or any kind. Yeah, that's about the peripheral. And the second one is it is about the superstitions, where it talks about the supernatural or unusual information. In traditional Chinese culture, for example, red is lucky color. And now here in Hong Kong, oh wow, this is what Prakash experienced in his life, where in Hong Kong, they omit the number 4, 4, 14, 44, 444, and etc. Everything is related to the number 4 is omitted. Why? Because in Hong Kong or Chinese or Taiwan, in this East Asia, they believe that 4 is related or it is the same pronunciations as C, which means death, which refers to the death. In Turkey, for example, nazars or charms, yeah, are to protect oneself from the curse of the evil eye. Oh wow! Let us find in your country or in your community, do you have this superstition, this supernatural or unusual information? Next, it is about the, again, it is culture as learn. Now we learn about the values. Values, it is uh, the shared ideas about what is right or wrong, fair or unfair, just or unjust, kind or cruel, or important and unimportant. During the period of our primary socializations, we carry the understanding and principles of truth, justice, goodness, which have believed and applied in our life. This belief play a role in determining the accepted standards of behavior in society. From this, uh, we then learn to think that a person should behave in a certain way. During this process, we form views about the nature and importance of human qualities, such as honesty, integrity, and openness. Values itself, it is used as the guiding principle in one's daily life. Now let us learn from these situations. Jack. Jack is a Taiwanese woman. Studied Master of Business in India. Oh, Jack is a man. He is a disciplined and uh, very smart person. Yeah. Once he wanted to shop at the market, yeah, his experience in the market surprised him because there were no queues when he wanted to pay or order something. He was confused to say that the last person to come had received service earlier than him. He was very angry with the seller in the market. This made him uncomfortable and difficult to adapt to in India. Can we get something here? Yeah, we assume that in Taiwan they have very uh, they have the regulations, they have habit, uh, who comes first, who get the first service. But Jack here experienced very different things in another country. Wow, of course, it is about the value that exists in certain contexts. We now learn about the worldviews. We believe that we are not born with a worldview. And we are sure that because our experience, so we can gain understanding about life, about other people, culture, and so on. Here, our views are formed during the socialization process and continue, yeah, to develop as we mature. Religion here often plays a fundamental role in shaping our worldviews, including one's ideas about the nature creation, yeah, about the multiple gods, about the origins life on the earth, or life that after, or a life after the death, or even the sin. Muslims, Jews, and Christians say that the universe was created and originated from God. While according to other theories, such as Taoist theory, they believe that the theory of the creations, yeah, it because of the forces of yin and yang energy, yeah, uniting to form uh, earth, yeah, in the center. While Hindus believe that there is one divine power in various forms. And you know, atheists, they are the non-religious people, they do not recognize the divine power as the creators of the nature. While for Buddhism, they believe on the multiple gods, that there are a lot of gods. And even the life after the death, reincarnation, or even the sin. If we do something bad, so we are sinful and we go to the hell. That's the world views, and everybody has the world views, even uh, the students here. Now let us learn from these situations. On Nainkan, Burmese, yeah, who is close friends with Barnabas from Nigeria, visited his friend's house several times. He found his friend raising many animals in his house. Whenever there is an event, Barnabas chooses and takes his pet, chicken or deer or something else, to cook. This makes all feel uncomfortable when visiting them because, because he is a vegetarian and an animal lover. The worldviews about animals is different from Aung Nainkan and the Barnabas. So the animal should be loved, and we cannot eat uh, the live creations, yeah, such as the uh, chicken and the deer. Well, next, culture as learned. Now it is time to discuss about traditions. I think we are very familiar with this word, traditions. In this life, we will also be constantly faced with religious and non-religious traditions that are formed from beliefs and can be passed down from generations to generations. And each tradition has its different rituals and practices. Yeah. Influenced by the core cultural beliefs and values, traditions in society can take the form of festival, celebrations, or other things. These pictures give us the examples of the celebrations of uh, Christmas in America or in other country, where it is an annual celebrations, yeah, which is celebrated every December 25th. And in some places, they have Santa Claus, gifts, and many kind of traditions. While the other pictures, it shows us with the holy celebrations, where the holy festivals here exist in India. It is a celebrations of the victory of good over the evil. Can you find in your community? Now let's learn from this study, these situations. The moment of vacations in Indonesia is one opportunity that cannot be forgotten by Cruz. He had the opportunity to enjoy the beautiful scenery of southern Sulawesi, Indonesia, with a warm welcome from the locals. One time, he saw a crowd of people looking like they were celebrating something. Even more surprised, he discovered the fact that it was a funeral service. The Torajans, it is the local people characteristics, yeah, in Sulawesi, southern Sulawesi. Torajans believe that When a person passes on or pass away, the body of the deceased may decay, but the spirit will linger until a grand funeral ceremony. The ceremony is called Rambu Solo. May seem to be an occasion of mourning, but the Torajans views it more as a celebration, one that delivers the spirit to the last destinations of life. A final resting place referred to as Puyo. The atmosphere is light, full of laughter and good humor, complete with a feast following a livestock sacrifice, yeah, and performances that last weeks. This isn't just about paying respect to the dead. For Torajans, the scale of Rambu Solo is a representation of social status. So the bigger party, the better. By Indonesia, treat kanvas. Of course, you have everybody or every culture, every community has different uh, celebrations or event um, for the funeral uh, events like this. Yeah, even you can find in your own community. Now let's move to the cultural norms. Again, it is a part of the culture as learned. During the socialization process, our elders, such as our family, our parents, or religious leaders, or teachers, and even mass media, such as television, radio, internet, yeah, they can convey message about what is expected and considered good, such as the form or the way of greetings, the communication style, non-verbal behavior in various situations and different contexts. Jane Jackson 2014 explains that at an early age, we learn what is considered polite, and impolite, it is about behavior, good manners, or bad. That is, we discover what we can and cannot say or do in a certain situations. Now let us identify the case study. Sean is an English man who is enjoying his vacations in Jogja, one of the cities in Indonesia. He is a 14-year-old little boy and is traveling with his older sister, Mila, 30 years old. One time, he called his sister, while he is walking. Mila, where are you going? The caretaker of the hotel where they were staying heard him and whispered to his friend, "This child is disrespectful to his brother." How? Why? Cultural norms in Jogja, in Indonesia, we use kinship uses for certain situations. For those who are older than us, we should refer them or address them using kinship, such as a brother or sister, uncle or sector. Yeah, why? Because it is to appreciate, to respect them, that they are older than us. In another country, probably they have different perspective about the use of kinship. Maybe they can just call by their first name for everybody who is older than them, or using other uh, terms. Maybe you can find in your community or in your family. Cultural skill. Related to cultural norms, The concept of cultural scheme is a mental structure of our knowledge about certain settings. Yeah? For example, the procedures of doing something like cooking instant noodles. Yeah, there are there are certain steps to do so. Then the lectures schema, for example, as it is written in Jane Jackson's 2014. Yeah, lecture scheme, procedures, placements of furnitures, and also it talks about the behavior, about the discourse, dress, social norms of politeness in a specific thing. Let us learn from these situations. I attended a lecture in Hyderabad, India. I saw the speaker was delivering the material, complete with a laptop in front of him and a blackboard behind him, and students sitting in a row facing the front towards the teachers. The students wore uniforms, complete with the black shoes and socks. I observed during the lecture process, I saw how this learning process lasted until the end. Students wrote what the teacher said and wait to be invited to speak. When they talk, I saw their gestures. When they showed that they agreed or understood the materials, they shake their heads. What's the relations? Well, here, the cultural shift, the concepts in our mind take place about the lecture scheme. The positions of the teachers should be in front, and behind of the teacher is the blackboard or whiteboard, and students are sitting in front, or they are facing the teacher, and also maybe about the behaviors, the way to dress in a certain situations. In this situation is in a classroom. They wore uniform and they have or they wear black shoes and socks and so on. We can find here, and you may find in your own perspective about this. Well, um, about the arrangements of the furnitures as well, for example, in some places or in the classroom, they may have a circle or letter U or any kind. Well, we can say that every place, every community, and every culture, they have their own cultural scheme. Now look at this one. Culture as again. Cultural script and language socializations. Jen Jackson said, a sequence of actions that is associated with a particular event or situations. It is related to the cultural scheme itself. But here, yeah, Jane Jackson emphasized that a cultural script entails cultural rules of speaking and use certain expressions, verbal or non-verbal forms of politeness and other form of discourse in particular situations. Now let's get back to that case. When the students show their, if they agree with the teachers or they understood with the materials, what did they do? They shake their hand. In another places, probably, if you shake your head, it means that it doesn't agree or you don't agree with certain situations. And of course, it will be much more complicated if we don't have what we call as the socio-pragmatic competence. It is very important to discuss with these situations. As we socialize with the language, yeah, into our own community practices, we gradually develop cultural, and communicative competence. There will naturally be variations in participants' behavior. The previous one, how the students shakes their heads, which means to refer to agree or understood. Yeah. But in some countries, some communities, it is of course different. And as a consequence of differing levels of socio-pragmatic, of course, it will determine how well we understand uh, the cultural differences. Social sanctions. Most by 2009, as cited in Jane Jackson 2014. Social sanctions are the measures used by society to enforce its rules of acceptable behavior. When an individual behaves in ways that deviate from accepted norms of behavior, social sanctions may be imposed. The social functions is carried out when an individual behaves in a way that deviates from the established norms. Here are the examples. If children use profanity in class or when talking with their grandparents, they would likely be considered rude. For punishment, they might be verbally excluded from activities. Every community or family, maybe they have their own different social sanctions, depending on the actions that is done. Such as these examples. Honorifics. Honorifics here are the titles or expressions in some languages that convey respect towards a social superior. Like the previous case study, because if we talk with other older people, we have to have certain honorifics. Let's say in a classroom, we can call our teachers as professor, Mr. If we call them by using their names or first name in a particular cultures, probably the cultures will be angry, or even you can get a social sanctions. Now let's move to the culture as shared. Jane Jackson explains that in our formative years, our family, community, religions, school, and home country serve as sources for our primary cultural orientations, promoting certain beliefs, values, traditions, languages, and norms, either directly or indirectly. As we mature and experience life, we gradually make more choices for ourselves. We all live as members of group. The group was originally determined by other people. For example, our parents and other parents. Then our family, community, religion, school, and etc. Yeah, they help us to acquire certain behaviors or culture. Culture as shared. Definitions of, talk about race. Definitions about the race itself have varied over time and across culture. Race is not a biological category right now, but has meaning as social category. Different cultures classify people into racial groups according to a set of socially significant characteristics. Yeah, this grouping is now a treatment to distinguish the uh, inferior or superior, and then they are given different access to power and other valuable resources. That's what's happening right now. Ethnicity, it is broader than the race. Jen Jackson here explains, ethnic groups may be distinguished by a wide range of characteristics such as ancestry, language or accent, customs or traditions, physical features, a common sense of history, family names, diet, forms of dress, and religion. It is a group of people of the same lineage and heritage who have the same and distinctive culture that is passed down from generations to generations. This ethnic group is more flexible and broader than grouping based on the biological things, yeah, such as race. The distinguishing characteristics are, as explained by Jen Jackson, about the ancestry or language or hobby, or the religion or the forms of dress, etc. Indigenous Australians, Italian Americans, Malays, and Chinese, so on and so on. Now let's learn from this case study. Gam, a Nigerian, was participating in a discussions forum in Manchester. He is critical, intelligent, and has a broad general knowledge of culture and politics. He became the representative of his country for this discussions forum. He had a hard time expressing his opinion. The moderator didn't seem to give him a chance to express his opinion in the big forum. Several times he raised his hand, but was not given a chance. As a result, in this forum, Gam didn't get a chance to speak at all. What happens here? Because Gam is Nigerian, because Gam has black color, curly hair, or what? That is the reasons. Now we learn about the subcultures. Here, subcultures is the smaller, coherent, collective groups that exist within a larger dominant culture and which are often distinctive because of race, social class, gender, etc. Subcultures, subgroups, or co-cultures are the same terminology that is often used to refer to smaller cultures. Yeah, age, whether they are youth culture or adult culture, appearance, dress, body piercings, or behaviors, or language, nonverbal actions, physical disability, professions, sports, or even technology. These are the characteristics that can delimit the subcultures. Speech community arise among any group that frequently interacts and share certain norms and beliefs. Yeah. Everyone can be a part of this speech community. Salzman, cited in Jane Jackson's, refers to a group of people who use the same variety of language and who share specific rules for speaking and interpreting speech. Now let us learn from this case. Tang Mo is a Thai working in England. He had a hard time interacting with local people. Local people tend to stay away from him and didn't want to make friends with him. This incident also happened to Chen, a Chinese. However, there are things that are different when there are Malaysians at work. They accept these people and befriend them. This incident made him give up working to earn money there. It wasn't long before he finally decided to return to Thailand. What happened to Tang Mo and also Chen? They also maybe speak English. They also speak English. And Malaysians too. But why it happens? Now let us think critically. Is there anything which is different from Tang Mo from Thailand and Chin from Chinese with the Malaysians? Now let's figure it out by this in groups and out groups. In groups refers to group that whom one feels emotionally close and with whom one shares an independent faith, such as family or extended family, a sorority or a fraternity, or people from one's own culture or ethnic groups. That is the in groups. Do Tang Mo and Chen feel in groups or the opposite of in group? That is out groups. Out groups are groups with whom one feels no emotional ties and at times from whom one may experience great psychological distance as a result of perceived scarce sources and inter-group competitions. Do they feel in group or out groups? Yeah, for Tang Mo and Chen, they feel out group. But is there any reasons why? Of course, there are reasons behind this. Now let us find the reasons. Accent and dialect. Dialect. Accents by Jane Jackson. It is the way one pronounces words when one speaks. And dialect, it is about the variety of language used in specific region. These two can signify and reinforce the membership in a particular group. And the same linguistic features may also serve as a barrier in other situations and prevent individuals from being accepted by other groups of communities. Now let's try to answer that situations in the previous case. Tang Mo and Chen, they feel out groups, while Malaysians, they feel in groups. Anybody can guess? Yeah, Tang Mo and Chen. Probably because they have different accent or dialect, which is very difficult to understand by the Englishmen. But Malaysians, probably they have good accents or dialect, and the articulation is quite good when they are speaking English, then they feel in group as the opposite of the Tang Mo and Chen. Culture as shared is very broad. Now we also discuss about the discourse communities. As long as we grow and each day as the results of socializations, we learn another language. We travel or study abroad or work and interact with people from other cultures or subcultures or yeah with people from different countries, and we became members of the diverse group, and this is what we call as the discourse communities, groups of people who share particular registers and use the kinds of text, both spoken and written, in which these registers occur. In a workplace, when we become a teachers for children, for example, we learn to adapt to them. And that's where the register comes in. As a teacher, and here, these examples gives us the idea about register. Davis 2005, as cited in James Jackson 2004. Registers are linguistically distinct varieties in which the language is systematically determined by the context. If we look at this picture, and little boy maybe who is learning English from the teachers, yeah. But here the teachers try to adjust the way she behaves, the style she communicates, or even the vocabulary used in during the teaching and learning. Yeah, so it depends on certain context, and the language we use is modified. That's registers. Now we learn from the case study. Jerry is a Malaysian who studies in New York. He often acts calm and reserved in his college while his friends interact more with other people. His friends often invite him to hang out and party, but Jerry always refuses. Once upon a time, New York youths had a birthday party without inviting Asians. Oh wow, what happens here? What cultures take place? We'll get the answers by this. Ethnocentrism from the culture as relative. Barry et al., as cited in James Jackson's, a point of view that accept one's group's standard as the best and judge all the groups in relations to theirs. Ethnocentric mindset doesn't foster the respect that is essential for cordial intercultural relations. In this case, for Jerry, probably, it is not very familiar or it is not common to have a birthday party or to have a party or hang out in cafe or doing some things like this. But for New York people or New York youth, it's common for them. And they think that this is the best way to entertain, to have relaxations or something else. Between Jerry and New York youths, they have different standards. The problem is that essentialism and reductionism, where it occurs when one treats a heterogeneous collections as homogeneous, as if all those of single nations or even subgroup have the same cultural characteristics. Jen Jackson, 2014. Now get back to this case, because this New York youths cannot invite Jerry to hang out and to have a party. Then next, they don't want to invite Asians students or Asian people to have these events. And of course, they think that all Asian people have the same characteristics as Jerry. In other case here, Akiro is a Japanese who has participated in students' exchange program in Indonesia. But in Indonesia, he experienced a culture shock where he always found himself always first in his campus building. He was surprised when he saw that many of his friends were late for class. Once, when Akihiko returned to Japan, he had a friend who was on vacations in Japan. He is Indonesian. They planned to go on vacations together. One time, Akihiro decided to come later than 10 a.m. They agreed to meet at the cafe that hour, that time. It turned out that when Akiko came at 10:30 a.m., he saw his friend had been waiting for him for a long time. And you know what happened? Here, the essentialism and reductionalism take place. Akihiro considered that all Indonesians are always late in every situation. And of course, it is a mistake to generate this one. As the opposites of ethnocentrism, we have the ethno-relativism. Here we have next the culture as dynamic and mediated. Culture is not something that you think or possess or life inside of. It is something that you do, and the way that you do it might be different at different times and in different circumstances. Over time, the world consistently changes. All cultures shift and change. When our world makes it easy for us to meet people with different linguistic and cultural environments, yeah, maybe using social media, media social such as Facebook or Instagram or something else, we are naturally exposed to the new world views, different discourse, cultural script, norms, values, etc. New people means different discourse, different cultural script, different worldviews. Yeah. Culture as individual, fragmentary, and imaginary. Jane Jackson, 2014. Our understandings of our culture or any cultural group that we belong to are incomplete and dependent on our experience, level of cultural knowledge and awareness, and our individual point of view. Culture as individual, fragmentary, and imaginary. Within a cultural group, perceptions about things vary from individual to individual. Even the way we represent our culture may also be different. All individual interpretations of their own, they interpret differently. Yeah, and the understanding of the new cultural insights that emerge as we learn and uh, grow will always be different for each individual. Furthermore, we can never fully understand all the knowledge and practices associated with any cultural group to which we belong. However, the language of interactions plays a significant role in any change mediated through communications in particular contexts. Um, Culture is variable and constantly produced through discourse, and the language interactions is central to how culture evolves within and between groups at every level by Scotland et al. 2012, as I did in James Jackson 2014. We belong to an imagined community. Well, we may not meet people who are considered to have the same culture as us. Then how can we think of ourselves and others as part of a particular culture? This imaginary community leads us to assume that other members follow norms, practices, and even beliefs. People who share the same religion or gender or share the same language can also feel or imagine that sense of community, national identity, national culture. How can we have the same sense with other people who are in the same country? Because we have this imagined community. Culture as contested, the other facets of culture. Culture as contested leads us to an understanding of contradiction. And there is no single culture in the sense of being homogeneous. At the different level, for example, differences in the conceptions of the use of terms, expressions, and communication style lead us to the contradiction. Culture is not simply passed from one generation to the next generations. Rather, it is a contested zone in which different groups struggle to define issues with their own interest in mind. By Martin and Nakayama, 2010, Moon, 2022, as cited in Jane Jackson's 2014. When we learn another language, interact with people from different cultures, our understanding of culture may be challenged. When we can't encounter different beliefs, ideas, and values, it, this all create a challenge for our understanding about it. Because what we know, we always wear is compared to something different. Then maybe at first we feel insecure. Now let us learn from this case. Francisco is an East Timorese who has good English skills. He often talks to his classmates in English every day. He was sure that he had mastered the language. One day, he met a Native American speaker who was talking to his teacher. When he heard the native, he felt insecure and didn't want to talk to him. He became quiet and tends to keep his distance. What happened with Francisco? Is it because of his culture is contested? Probably yes. He feels insecure. His understanding about language is probably different from the native speakers. And of course, we use language, he use English, but the level of understanding comparing with the native speakers is different. So he feels insecure or even rejected. Culture as communication. Culture is a code. We learn and share. And learning and sharing require communication. And the communications requires coding and symbols, which must be learned and shared. Communications and culture are inseparable. Smith, 1966, as cited in Jane Jackson. Through communications, we realize that culture is being developed and learned. Through the act of communications, indirectly, cultural characteristics such as customs, norms, rules, rituals, law, are also developed in social interactions in groups, organizations, or communities. So that's why culture is shared through communication. Now, answer the following questions. We are almost at the end of this course. Have you got all the points? If you got the understandings and all the points, then it will be easy for you to answer these 5 questions. What are the functions and characteristics of culture? How are cultural socialization processes? How is the role of language and socialization processes? What are the 7 phases of culture? And what are the examples of cultural beliefs, values, and worldviews? Thank you. Here, the last of the first meeting. Here is the reference. Goodbye.